Great. Okay, well, it's 12 o'clock on the dot. So thanks to everyone who's joined so far. There might be a few more that join in the next few minutes, but great to have you all along today. I'm Carla Hoppe. I'm the founder of Wealthbright. Really delighted you've joined us for this virtual open day session. I'm going to kick us off in a minute, but before I do, I would love to just introduce you very briefly to our two panelists who have joined me today to share their experiences of our financial literacy courses. So Ellie and Michaela, I don't know if the two of you just want to give a quick hello to those on the line and just quickly share who you are as well. Ellie, do you want to go first?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Great. Hi, I'm Ellie. I'm head of talent at Flex Legal. We are an interim paralegal and lawyer recruitment platform, as well as we run a social mobility trainee scheme for aspiring lawyers. Been at Flex for nearly 2 years now, and really excited to talk about your fantastic course, Carla.
Brilliant. Thank you. And Michaela, you go.
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Michaela. I'm a trainee solicitor at Flex Legal. I completed the course as part of training on the readiness program at Flex. So thank you, Carla, for having us today.
No, thank you so much to both of you. So, I'm just going to share my screen for people. I thought what I'd do is just kick us off with a bit of background in terms of what we're going to cover over the course of the next hour together. Let's say we might close a bit earlier, give you some of your time back, depending on how we get on and how many questions there are. But just to remind people, we're here today talking about our new Back to Basics financial literacy course for junior lawyers. So this is what we're going to discuss. I'm going to give you a bit of background in a moment about why we built this course, what's kind of motivated us to want to work in the sector to help build financial acumen in junior lawyers. We're then going to break for a short panel discussion with Ellie and Michaela, and they're going to share some of their own experiences, both from the perspective of employers, but also from Michaela as to what she's learned and, some of the words of wisdom that she'll share with others who might be thinking about joining the course. I know we've got a blend of people on the call today. So there are some who are here with their hat on as people who are thinking about their own talent and their own workforce and how this course might be useful to them. So do listen out to what Ellie has to say as we move along. And then equally, I know lots of you have signed up because you've seen posts on social media about this program. I know there are a lot of sort of junior lawyers, apprentices, and even aspiring solicitors who are with us. So we'll definitely cover what you might expect to get out of the program today and how you can get involved if you'd like to join the next cohort. So let me start with a bit of background. Why did we build this course and who are we at Wealthbright? So I guess first things first, and let me just make sure you're seeing the next screen. Yeah. So a bit about who we are. At Wealthbright, we're the only independent financial education providers in the legal sector. So what does that actually mean in practice? Well, it means that we're not a regulated financial services company. We only educate people and we provide valuable education and guidance around managing personal finances. So we're not here selling a financial product or a service. We do this really from a genuine perspective of wanting to upskill and benefit people in the sector. And why? Well, we do that because we know firsthand just how important this is in terms of supporting lawyer well-being, helping enhance performance of people in work, and also to help protect the integrity of the profession. And I'll talk in a little moment about how those sort of cultural and compliance elements come together when we talk about building personal financial acumen skills. Oops, sorry, wrong way around. So why does this matter and who should care about this stuff in the sector? Well, I think it's fair to say that any firm can be impacted by poor financial literacy or poor financial well-being and the impact it has on everyday individuals. As you can see from this screen, a few things that I think is really important to call out. Money is still very much the number one cause of stress and anxiety in working adults in the United Kingdom. Unfortunately, that statistic has been true for quite a number of years in the UK. And work that was done by the CBI estimated that the cost to the British economy of poor financial literacy is about £20 billion annually. And if you ask yourself, where does that number come from? Was actually as a result of all of the sickness leave, lack of low productivity, absences, and other impacts on the way people show up in the workforce when they're struggling with a lot of financial stress. Now, I know that you know that law is a broad church and it's really reflective of the general population. And that means law is not immune from these same challenges. And at Wealthbright, every year we survey lawyers across the UK to ask them about how they feel, manage and deal with their personal finances. And some of what you see on the right-hand side of this screen are the answers that people provide us in terms of how financial stress is showing up for them. So you can see a huge proportion of people say they feel anxious. They're struggling with financial anxiety. Lots of people talk about the difficulties of sleepless nights brought about by money worries or a lack of motivation, and for some, even depression. Now, of course, those are worrying trends, but it also, it probably isn't a huge leap, therefore, for you to understand that if you're dealing with these types of symptoms brought about because of financial stress, well, it's all that more easy to see how you might not be showing up and performing your best in the workplace. So this is a big part of why it's so important to break the money taboo and actually help upskill people around personal financial management. The other really important point I want to get across today is that anyone in the firm can struggle. This isn't just something that folks at one end or the other of the career spectrum deal with. As you can see from this data, and again, this all comes from our annual financial wellbeing and law review, actually financial stress spans across the grades. There are peaks and troughs. And what you'll notice from this is that the peaks are felt at the earliest stages of people's career. And that's why as an organisation at Wealthbright, we really focus on upskilling people at the start of their career. Because we believe in order to succeed in our mission to create a generation of financially savvy lawyers, we've got to start right at the beginning, helping people learn some basic financial management skills that will help set themselves up for future success and help reduce this peak stress that is being felt in the run-up to and immediately upon qualification. Something else that we've been talking about a lot in Wealthbright is, this is something that's, financial stress, cost of living, fundamental lack of financial education in school is really relevant for everybody, right, in the UK. So are there specific things that are going on in the legal sector that are in some way compounding that stress or, stopping people from gaining the skills that they might otherwise want to gain? And there's a few things that people in the sector have told us about, right? So there's lots on this screen. I'm only going to call out a couple of things so we can kind of move on to the juicy discussion and you guys can get to ask questions and answers. But I think it's fair to, say law is a, generally speaking, quite stressful working environment. People are under quite a lot of pressure and demand to show up and perform on the job. That often means that issues relating to personal well-being, including personal finances, fall to the bottom of the to-do pile. Yeah. So what we have found at Wealthbright is actually by intervening with structured learning, we can break that cycle and we can give people space and time where they can actually build those skills effectively. We also know that in law, there is a bit of a culture of expertise. You are all highly educated, highly qualified people who are literally paid to be the expert in the room. But sometimes what that does is also prevent people from asking for help when they might need it, or saying, I don't know. What does my pension mean? Do you know what I'm supposed to be doing? I've heard about budgeting, but I'm not really sure where to start, right? So again, structured learning and intervention through learning tools like our course are a great way of creating a safe space for people to learn. bringing peer groups together and offering them the opportunity to kind of interact and ask the questions that for whatever reason they may be too afraid to ask in the workplace. And then lastly, I think, there is very much a perception of wealth in the sector. I mean, well, I'm sure we're all familiar with some of the many typically US TV shows that glamorize the life of lawyers. And I think, social media has its part to play in kind of telling a story about the type of lifestyle lawyers are expected to live. And what we know from our data, and you'll see the data on the right hand side of this screen, is actually some of these factors that are really prevalent in the legal sector are influencing how people behave with their money. 60% of lawyers tell us they feel pressure to spend beyond their means. 70% do not have a regular practice of budgeting. Nearly half of all lawyers are regularly using credit to pay for essentials because they've run out of money. And about a third of lawyers, or just over a third, have less than £1,000 in cash savings. Those statements on the right-hand side of this slide are representative of some of the most foundational financial management skills: good budgeting, emergency savings, and the ability to understand how debt and credit works. And this is part of why we've built the course. So our course is built to address directly these problems and to put it into context for lawyers, addressing the realities of the working environment that they're dealing with today, and actually, addressing head on how you can manage the pressure of lifestyle inflation, but also start to learn some of these foundational management skills. And I guess one last thing, of course, because I've heard this challenge many times as we've moved through our experience at Wealthbright, is, well, it's personal finance, right? Well, this is a personal issue, so individuals need to go and figure it out for themselves. Now, for those on the call, if you're here as a talent leader, I know you're probably already convinced that there's merit in supporting people both from a cultural and well-being perspective. But I wonder how many of you know that the SRA's Code of Conduct explicitly refers to good financial management for legal professionals. It's actually part of the Code of Conduct, and therefore, as lawyers, in order to uphold the integrity of the profession, it's really important that you're also aware of the obligation to kind of learn how to manage your personal finances, not just because it's good for you, but also to kind of shore up your resilience and ensure that you aren't tempted or find yourself in a negative cycle that could lead you down a path to taking action that we definitely don't want to happen. And of course, some of the headlines on that screen might look a bit scary, but here's something I would say. The bad actor rarely starts as one. More often than not, something goes on for somebody at an individual level that can cascade and get out of control. And what we want to do with our program is intervene at a much earlier stage in people's careers and in lives to help them build skills that will avoid them getting into trouble. And that's the last reason why we've built this program. So hopefully that's been helpful to kind of paint a bit of a picture of the why, the big picture why. We're going to break into a bit of a panel discussion now, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And then when we come back towards the end of the discussion, I'm going to tell you specifically what's included in the course and how you can get involved if you'd like to sign up for the next cohort. But that brings me to kind of where we wanted to go next with the discussion points. And so Ellie, Michaela, you can both probably take yourselves off on mute now. Ellie, I know you and I had a chat before this webinar to kind of consider some of those elements of, like, as a talent leader, how you're thinking about financial education, and what you're considering when you're thinking about helping people build skills at the start of their career. I wonder if you just want to share a little bit more about, like, what motivated you to take Michaela and others through this course as part of your readiness program.
Absolutely, yes. And I'm glad that you reminded me to take myself off mute, because the last time we did this, I forgot. I thought that was really interesting, firstly, about the SRA Code of Conduct. I actually didn't know that, and I think it's really useful. Our responsibilities really as talent leaders there. But I think the number one thing for me that I've seen is the well-being point that you also touched on. I think there is this idea and impression amongst people generally, but also amongst young people when they're making a decision to study law or go into law, that all of the salaries and starting salaries are the big numbers that we see highlighted at the very kind of magic circle end of the spectrum. And sadly, it's just not the case that, everyone is earning 150K early on in their career. Um, so I think that plays into well-being in a big way. People are at an all-time low in terms of burnout and stress across lots of industries, but particularly in law, I think. So it's really about looking at how we can support people with their well-being and take things off their plate rather than add additional things. So we know it can be really difficult for junior talent breaking into the legal industry, and lots of junior lawyers might have faced greater barriers to entry, given that law is such a kind of competitive industry.
Yeah.
So people are under a lot of external pressures, well-being wise, and also at work. So it's really about making sure that we can equip people to avoid that additional worry that that thinking about finances might place on them, and really support them not to feel overwhelmed with the financial side of things, to equip them to understand their finances much better, and therefore succeed. Employees and colleagues that have better well-being and have have a reduced stress level are much more likely to be more efficient in their role as well. So I think once you look at sort of strategies you can put in place to help people well-being wise, will have a knock-on effect of creating a more efficient workforce. A happier workforce is a better workforce in my mind anyway.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, employees that have a better well-being will be more efficient, and that sense of control is much better than someone kind of worrying about their paycheck and about their money.
Yeah, I think, you've touched on a really important point there, Ellie, and I know I've heard it particularly from a lot of the apprentices and who are coming into the sector at the minute that, there's a heap of pressure on them just to like navigate like the career that they've entered, figure out like the firm they've joined or the role that they've taken up. They may have had to relocate to a new place, so they're no longer near family and friends. They're dealing with quite a lot of change in their lives. And I think it's interesting when you consider like how the financial aspect of well-being kind of overlays on top of that already quite like big transition moment for people at a really early age in their sort of careers and lives. And I know a lot of people who have said, actually having the added layer of financial stress is really quite burdensome on them at a time where they're really trying to give their all to their workplace. So I think that's a really important part of what you shared. I
And
guess,
I
sorry.
think also our school and academic system just isn't set up to give people those basic understanding of even, your pay slip and tax codes and things like that, which I think it can be really the cumulative pressure of, as you say, taking on a new environment in an unfamiliar setting, and then also having to understand and learn almost an entirely new language for people in their first office role. And there aren't, in lots of environments, they aren't set up to really have that dictionary of understanding how to read their payslip and understand this whole new world, really.
Absolutely. No, I think that's spot on. And this point about like familiarity with language is so important to me. Part of the reason this course is called the Back to Basics because we spend a lot of time covering really the practical fundamental elements of the building blocks essentially of good financial management. Um, Ellie, I want to come back in a moment to something else you said, which was, I think, important, particularly for any of the talent leaders on the call, around sort of how programs like this can help supplement, people's kind of sense of being valued in the workforce outside the pay scale format. But I kind of guess I want to turn to Michaela because I think before we come back to that juicy subject, Michaela, I guess really interesting to hear your perspective around this point about, how talking about money at the start of your career can help change the way you think or behave with money. And I wondered if you just want to maybe start by sharing with people on the call about, how you find the course and what you maybe took most out of it.
Yeah, definitely. So I found that there were a lot of valuable things that I took away from the course, especially focusing on how we have a relationship with money, and what our money personality is, because that varies from person to person. We all value it differently. And our relationship with money can be based on a number of different things, external factors such as how we were raised, what we've witnessed from other people, and things that we've experienced. So I really appreciated the course forcing us to kind of look inwards and how we approach money. So that was really, really insightful as well. I think once we understand our relationship with money, we can assess ourselves and see what works for us. Like I said, we're all different. So, one size doesn't fit all. We're all going to have a different approach to our financial goals. So I really valued that. And also the tools that the course provided as well, especially the spreadsheet. It was really valuable to have something in front of you where you can input, your expenses, your income. There was a section for savings, investments, and emergency buffer. So having that in front of you is quite confrontational because, again, you have to force yourself to see, exactly where things are going and where things are allocated. And, it can be hard to kind of look at your finances, but it's important because you can see, can I cut back in certain areas? What else can I be doing to maximize, my financial future?
Yeah.
So that was really good as well.
I'm smiling broadly because I will be totally honest. I've been blown away by how many people have said they've enjoyed the spreadsheet. I was fully anticipating, and I think this is a really important point. So many people in the legal sector will be familiar with this like really out of date trope that lawyers don't do numbers, this sort of like mindset that like the accountants went to do numbers, lawyers went to do words, and therefore the two shall never meet. The reality is, of course, that it's not that we can't, it's just that perhaps we haven't before, right? We're not used to confronting the numbers, as you said, and that's you put it so beautifully there. Thank you, Michaela. I promise I didn't pre-feed her with that
Yeah.
statement. But actually, that's the whole point of this course is to say, okay, look, it's not about telling you there's an absolutely right or wrong way of doing things, but it is about helping you find ways of working with your finances that are going to help you make more informed decisions. I was chatting to another he's actually a qualified lawyer who took the program as well. And it was interesting. He was saying to me he's used other budgeting apps before, and those have been really helpful at like finding subscriptions he'd forgotten he'd signed up to and didn't realize he was still paying for. But it was only whenever he went through the exercise of filling in the spreadsheet with his monthly spend that he realized that perhaps for him, lifestyle inflation wasn't really about just buying the big ticket items. It was all these like small things that he was actually spending quite a bit more money than he realized on. And it was like, again, seeing it in black and white in front of him that forced him to go, oh, okay, I hadn't really had the opportunity to stop, reflect, think, and act differently. And I think, that's a big part of what this course is about, is kind of bringing people to a point where they actually are given the time and the space to reflect.
I
Ellie,
think
I want to, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
anecdotally as well with the course, I think the fact that there are those practical tools has been really useful in preventing that overwhelm and ensuring that our trainees, from my experience, feel empowered with something to actually use rather than just the theory. So it is that really practical side of being able to go away, use the budgeting spreadsheet straight away and see the impact and feel like you're taking control of your finances rather than just learning in theory. I think especially in the legal industry, we do so much reading and there's so much theory that actually being practical and straight away being able to implement some change can make you feel a sense of control and reduce that overwhelm. So I think that's really important. And I think that was another thing that was important for us and our trainees to remove the noise, because I think there's a lot of we're very saturated in terms of law influencers generally, money experts, qualified and unqualified, etc. So I think it can be a bit overwhelming receiving so many messages about money, and also in the media, there's a lot of doom and gloom about the financial direction of the legal sector and of the markets generally. So I think removing a bit of noise with more factual advice has been really useful. And I think to your point before, Carla, I think for the talent leaders out there who might not have direct influence on the salaries of your junior employees, what I've found is it's a really nice way, as I say, to empower trainees at the entry level or junior end of the spectrum to make their paycheck go as far as possible and within the scope of what they're earning to ensure that they're maximizing their access to their money and making sure that they're really squeezing everything that they can out of their paycheck and that we're really helping them to do that.
I agree. And like, again, something we've heard a lot, which I think is driven in part by the media more generally at the moment, is that there are a lot of people at the start of their careers who kind of feel like the world is just so doom and gloomy. There's almost a like, what's even the point in trying attitude? It's getting harder for people to get on the property ladder. It's harder for people to save. You hear a lot about the need for the bank of mum and dad. And therefore, people have almost, I've talked to a lot of junior lawyers at the start of their career who kind of just would admit, like, just like it's never going to happen. So, what's even the point? I might as well just enjoy my money and spend it on things that are going to bring me, immediate joy at the expense of maybe thinking about your longer term future. Um, so I do think helping people with really practical tools to kind of challenge some of those beliefs is important, but also then speaks to, I guess, the other side of this discussion we wanted to have, which was the power of financial education in helping socially mobile talent. I think something that's really struck me is that when we spoke to the participants on our spring cohort and we asked them, where do you currently go for financial information? 90% said they're reliant on either family, friends, or social media, right? So, I think we've alluded to this already. School and universities are not providing this type of education as part of like traditional full-time educational courses. The reality is that financial advisors or the advisory sector, they won't get out of bed to work with people at the start of their career because it doesn't work out for them financially, and those people don't have enough wealth or assets to justify the cost of advice, right? Which means people are going to where they can get this stuff for free. And we know, and we've chatted about this beforehand, that of course, whilst it's not a bad thing to go looking for this in other spaces, family, friends, and social media are fallible. There's a risk of things being inaccurate. There's some bias that's going to be introduced into those environments and perhaps limitations, right? We know that not everybody has a very strong network of financially confident individuals who can guide them and teach them. So, Elliot, you and I chatted about this before, but like big part of Flex's mission is about helping socially mobile talent access law. How do you see like financial acumen and social mobility coming together?
Gosh, it's such a huge element, isn't it? And such a big area that you could say so much about. But sadly, the legal industry still does have a huge social mobility issue and inclusion issue generally. And I think the fact that we struggle as an industry to ensure that we have enough and a fair amount of candidates and lawyers from working class backgrounds is a contributing factor to the inequity in I guess the disparity, I suppose, in prior knowledge about those basic financial skills of those entering the job market in the legal sector. I think financial skills can be quite exclusive, and we have a duty as talent leaders to equip our junior talents who are from lower socioeconomic backgrounds with that prior knowledge to supercharge them almost and redress the balance
Yeah.
and ensure that it's more equitable for everyone entering the industry. Um, so yeah, we and from personal experience, all of our trainees hit the government's kind of social mobility criteria because we are a social mobility scheme. And they do identify themselves as having fewer tools to understand finances.
Mm.
So, as I say, we really have to ensure we're redressing that balance. And also, I think there can be a lot of shame about speaking about money. So, we have to ensure that we're modeling inclusive language around financial health. And even by putting candidates or employees on this course, we're demonstrating in itself that we're open to discussing
Mm.
money, that it's not a taboo for us.
Mm.
So I think that's really important. I think I think we've spoken about this before, Carla, on the social and cultural capital point. I think that um, yeah, that there can be a disparity between trainees feeling intimidated or feeling quite comfortable speaking about finances. So yeah, courses like this and also just generally speaking about money and educating people on finances is the first step to sort of redressing that balance and ensuring that candidates from diverse socioeconomic backgrounds feel less othered and more included.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really important point, this piece about feeling othered in the environment if you haven't come across some of these like financial dynamics before. Michaela, I know like you've thought a bit about this in terms of like how, kind of almost regardless of your socioeconomic background, really empowering this type of learning can be. Like, I guess I wonder, like, from your perspective, there's people on the call who are probably thinking about joining the course. Anything that you would specifically say to them in terms of what they might get out of it, or what you've done differently off the back of it? I know you've mentioned the spreadsheet already, but anything else that you might want to share with people?
I would say definitely go for it. We've spoken about how there's been a lack of institutionalized financial education. You're not going to get this in university or any other higher education. So you have to go and seek this information for yourself. And there is a lot of information out there. I was getting a lot of my knowledge per se from TikTok, just because you open the app and you've got people talking to you left, right, and center about various different things. And it can become very overwhelming, the influx of information. But I would say it's a good starting point, but the course really kind of solidified some of the knowledge that I had picked up. And I think that's really important to have structured learning, something that I could go back to and refer to if I needed to. So that was really helpful. And I also think in terms of being junior, it doesn't really matter how much you earn. It's not about what you've got coming in, but it's about how you manage it. And I think there are really good tools out there to help you manage your money and maximize your potential. I know it can be really difficult because you might feel like, oh, I don't even earn enough. Like you said, Carla, what's the point? There's no point in trying to, pursue these type of goals, but there really is a point, and it's just about your mindset. Have a positive mindset and be organized and be in control. That's another thing the spreadsheet sheet helped with. Seeing it there in front of you, you're in control of what's going in and what's coming out. So I think now is the right time to kind of start getting involved and start getting, more interested in your finances, because it will serve you well in the future, definitely.
Thanks, Michaela. That was really great. And I think, something that I've been really struck by over the course of the last few years of working with the sector is just actually how curious people at the start of their career actually already are. Michaela's just shared there that, most sort of Gen Zs in the workforce today are already actively asking questions about their finances, but they're genuinely looking for trusted resources because they know TikTok can't be trusted, right? They know, and they're starting to feel overwhelmed, but they want to do right by this. Again, we've talked a little bit on this webinar already about sort of the power of supporting people who may not be on the mega bucks in law, who want to learn how to make the most of their money. But we've also had cohort participants who have come from the magic circle, who are on those six-figure salaries. And what I found really intriguing by that cohort of individuals is that they have a really strong sense of doing right by the privilege that they have gotten in those opportunities and in those roles, but they don't know where to start. And so, courses like ours can be a really powerful way of giving them the confidence that they're taking the right steps to kind of secure that financial kind of wealth that they have been lucky enough to achieve at a very early stage in their career. So I think regardless, speaking particularly to the talent leaders who may be on the call right now, regardless of how much your juniors are earning, I think there's this point that coming back about giving people a sense of control, which reduces stress, giving them some practical guidance, really practical tools that they can start to implement immediately, but also encouraging them that it's okay to ask questions within the sector and it's okay to talk about personal finances in the sector, and giving them the confidence to seek out, further resources as they move forward in their career. That's been wonderful. Thank you so much, panelists, for your contributions. I'm going to share my screen again. I mean, actually, maybe I'm going to share my screen again just to like share with people the specifics of what's covered in the course, and how you can get involved. But then I'd really love to break for questions. So we'll come back to the panelists because it may be that you have some specific questions for them. So hopefully you can all see my screen again. And I'm just sharing here. So specifically what is included in this course. This is our Back to Basics program. So the way it works is that there are four core modules of learning. As you can see, we start with helping people how to master their money mindset. Michaela put it beautifully earlier that, so much of your relationship with money is based upon how you're brought up. So we tackle that head on and get people to reflect, consider their relationship, how that's influencing their behaviors. And we spend a good chunk of time on how to manage spending versus savings. This is where we introduce people to the fundamentals of budgeting and emergency savings. One of the things I've been struck by is how many junior lawyers ask me, what is an emergency and how should I be saving for it? Our sort of interactive spreadsheet tool that they all get access to take home for includes a sort of live emergency buffer savings program, so they can calculate how much they want to save for, what savings they've already got, and how long it's going to take them to reach their target. Then we spend a good chunk of time on how to reduce financial stress, considering what's going on in the legal sector, lifestyle inflation, the feeling of needing to keep up with peers, but also really importantly, signpost some of the excellent legal sector support services if they are needed. So folks like the Solicitors Charity, and I know we've got Anita from the Solicitors Charity on the line with us today. They're doing some fantastic work, helping really at the front end when people find themselves in financial crises. And then also law care, because of course, for many people, financial worries show up in some form of mental health struggles, and you saw that earlier. So we talk a lot and teach people about practical ways to recognize and deal with financial stress. And then that all comes together in module 4, where they build their own series of financial plans and financial goals, which kind of accumulate in this take-home resource that they can then go away and use month to month. It's delivered on our platform. It's all online. It takes approximately 3 to 5 hours, depending on the individual, to complete. Our summer cohort will start on the 5th of June. And as you can see here, the course is priced at £100 plus VAT per person. I'll show you in a moment. If you're an individual, you can scan a QR code and get online and go straight through if you're convinced and you just want to join the program. For organizations who might want to put some of their people through the program, if you have up to 5 people, you can also do it online. If you think you have a group of more than 5, you'll be directed at some point to come and have a chat with us, because we've got a separate onboarding process for anyone with larger groups joining the course. Now, an important announcement, as you can see on the bottom of that screen, we're really grateful to be partnering with the Solicitors Charity and in order to be able to offer a small number of scholarships to people to take this program on a fully funded basis. We'll be making announcements next week about the scholarships, and if you are someone who identifies as someone who is from a lower socioeconomic background on a low income, there will be details of how you can apply for the scholarship. So keep an eye out for our socials for that. And then what do you walk away with if you take this course? Well, Michaela already shared some wonderful sentiments about what she got out for it, but I thought it'd be useful just to remind you. This is about improving confidence, giving people skills for life, and really encouraging them to build financial competency amongst a community of peers. And you'll see of the variety of sort of junior lawyers that have taken this program, everyone got something out of it to sort of like really reckon with their pre-existing kind of thoughts about managing personal finances and actually really practical take-home messages. So that leaves me with a final point to come back to say, any questions? I'll bring this, I'm going to open up for the chat. You'll see on this screen, if you are keen to jump in, you can just simply scan that QR code and it'll take you through to secure your spot. But I wonder, does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask, either of myself or any of the panelists? Feel free to add them in the chat, or I can also, I'll stop my screen share and come back so you can see everyone's lovely faces. Let's see. Any questions? If not, that's absolutely fine. And what I will, oh, here we go. There's a question that's come through from Lisa about the annual survey. Oh, and how do people participate? Well, great question. We run the annual survey. Well, the survey runs every year, obviously it's annually, and we release it. We will send it out to firms and we'll share it on socials. This year it will be run in autumn. We'll be opening up the survey in October. We'll be closing it at the end of October, and we'll be releasing the details of this year's 2025 Financial Wellbeing and Law Survey during Talk Money Week, which takes place in November. So Lisa, keep an eye out. That will be happening later in the autumn. Anita, is the June course open to all lawyers or just junior lawyers? Great question, Anita. Just to clarify, the Back to Basics course is specifically for junior lawyers. So you will need to be an apprentice, a trainee, a paralegal, or a newly qualified solicitor to take part. So if you are kind of looking to access the course, you'll be prompted to say which category you fit into, and you'll be able to select the one that most represents you. Eleanor, what's the biggest financial literacy challenge you've noticed from junior lawyers, and how does the course address it? Great question. I think to be honest, the biggest challenge is knowing where to start. I think actually there's a real sense of overwhelm in the system. And I think that a lot of lawyers are kind of in theory aware of the need to budget or the need to save, but they don't know practically how to necessarily go about doing that themselves. They kind of know they ought to be kind of taking account of where their money is going, but they haven't really thought about categorizing their spend. They haven't really thought about a process for keeping on track of where they're spending their money. And when it comes to savings, they know, again, in theory, it's a good thing to do, but I don't really know what I'm saving for. So part of what they learn in the course is the ability to identify short-term, medium-term and long-term goals. How do we categorize them? How do we build a smart financial goal? Is it realistic? Is it achievable? Is it specific? And you actually go through the course and have to articulate your SMART goals when you build up your financial plan. And again, it's about therefore helping people put a structure around their finances. So it's not just something that they keep saying to themselves, oh, yeah, I need to figure that out at some point, and then they never get round to it. It's really just kind of bringing that control framework to something that can just feel quite difficult to manage. Thank you for those thoughtful questions. I mean, if anyone has any more, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, what I might just do is just bring up that last slide again for everybody, in case you didn't get a chance to kind of grab those details before you go. And then what I will say is that after this call, we'll be circulating the recording. I'll also share for everybody who's signed up onto the call details of our impact report from our last cohort, and of course the link if you are interested in either participating directly on the course or you think you might like to put your own people through the program, how you can get in touch with us to make that happen. But otherwise, that just leaves me to say thank you so much to Ellie and Michaela. Your contributions have been really valuable and really fantastic. And thank you to everybody who joined us today. Really great to see you all here. And yeah, I hope that we will see you again soon. And I give you back 15 minutes of your time today. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Carla.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.